All right, everybody. We're going to be going through this lap here, a 144.669, just to kind of make sure we're on the same page. Track temperature is about 31°C. Track state was pretty clean. This car is really heavily affected by the current track state, so I would really highly recommend practicing consistently in the same state. And if you're trying to replicate this lap, maybe try the clean lap and then move into dirtier tracks over time. But otherwise, we'll watch the full lap from my POV, and then we'll get into a quick analysis. All right. So if we look at this lap here, we'll start with this first corner here. To preface a bit, I'm currently on this setup. You can kind of see it here in the bottom. I'm running about a negative 2.5 brake bias. I like to have mine a little bit further to the rear. It's going to make it a little bit more unstable, but it will slow down sooner. But that's a little bit personal preference and kind of how you feel with the car. But going into turn one here, I'm really going to be kind of looking at this 200 board and aiming for somewhere between 250 and 300. Maybe 250 if I'm on light fuel. You really want to turn in once you can kind of see this coloring pop up here. So once you can kind of see all the colors is when I about turn in. My goal is, if I go to chase here, my goal is to kind of just nudge the edge of this line here. You can see in this lap, I go a bit too far, and as a consequence, I end up sliding a bit and having to catch the car. So in an ideal lap, you'd actually slow it down a little bit later, get a little bit better turn in, and you can get a better start. I'd say the biggest thing here is not going on throttle too early. If you fan out here, we'll go ahead and let's turn this mic volume down. If you get too far onto this exit curbing, obviously there's the off track if you take off all four tires. If you get too onto this curbing, you can get kind of some bumps that slow you down a bit. So I would say on the exit of this, you really want to hop off of this curbing as soon as possible. Ideally, on exit, you can see I kind of missed it here. You want to get all the way out here with your right side tires, but then you want to hop back over onto the regular tarmac as soon as possible. And then so you'll go up through here, try to stick it as close to these inside and outside curbs as you can. Try to not jump over them because that'll lose you some time. But as we approach the chicane here, bus stop, we are going to slow down. We're going to look for this line and try to brake right as we get on top of it. So if you look in cockpit view here, for me, when I'm going through it, I'm thinking, like visually, I'm thinking I want to brake kind of just past it. So you'll see I kind of hop on my brakes here right as it falls out of view. And you want to start your turn in almost immediately. You really want to get that car pointed. Your goal for this curbing here is to get as close as you can to this inside wall. And the closer you can get, the better you'll get, better of an exit you'll get. So if we back up here, watch it at speed, you can see you have to get really close to that curb to get as the best possible exit. And something to help with that is when you're coming in and braking, you'll see I'm full on the brakes, and I start to come off of it pretty soon and quick. And by the time we hit the curb, I'm almost fully off of the brakes. The reason for that is you really want that front end to come out of compression. So when you're braking, you dip the nose down. Because we're hopping so much curb, we really want to bring the nose back up a little bit, hop, and then get back on the brakes. So if I slow it down here, you'll see I get back on the brakes a little bit to stabilize the car. You're going to hop each one of these curves. So let's go back to cockpit. You really want to hop every curve here. Just absolutely use all the track you can. And in fact, here, you kind of want to hop the grass as well. This one's a little bit riskier because if you hit it wrong, it'll unsettle the car and make you want to spin out this way. The key is really to you have to nail this jump first. So if you can nail that one and then get a turn in good and early, the rear end won't catch that curb and you can get some rotation. So for anyone practicing this corner, I'd say you really need to work on your entry. Make sure you set that up right. Try and straight line it as much as possible. Get real close to this wall. Stick the landing. Have the car be stable. You don't want it going off this way or that way. And then just start turning as soon as you can. Get on the throttle and throttle it out. But yeah, taking as much curb as you can. If you dip a tire onto the grass, it'll be a 1X. And then going into here, you really want to try and hold it a little bit tighter than I did. If you end up out here like I did, you ideally will want to brake a little, just to kind of reel the car back in over here. Let it go, kind of, you can see I'm coasting a lot, just trying to get the car slowed down a little bit more. Where you get on throttle, for me, I'm kind of looking for this pad here. This one's a little bit more feel. I think it's important to practice and get a feel for, this is the right speed, and then where you should throttle out. But I think a general rule of thumb that I try and follow is when I see this go by, I'm ready to be on throttle and just throw it out, full throttle it. You can ease on the throttle a bit. I would do that just because otherwise you'll get thrown into the wall out here. On exit, you really want to get as close to these little grass patches here as you can. You will not get a 1X until you go over these patches. So you can see just right on the edge there, as close as you can get. That way you're maximizing track space. This section here that we're going into, so we're going into the boot here. These are pretty special. You can gain and lose a lot of time here. One thing about this corner and the next one is that they are very heavily cambered, and so what we're going to do is we're going to use that to our advantage. So going into this corner, we're going to position to be on the outside of the track. Brake before you pass this grate. If you brake at it, you're probably going to go a little far out. But brake at this grate, and then as soon as you're on the brakes, start pointing that car towards the apex of the corner, or towards the inside of the corner. The reason is that for that is that the corner, at least in the way iRacing has modeled it, seems to be much more heavily cambered on this inside. So when we're slowing the car down to keep some stability in the rear, especially at this low brake bias, we really want to utilize that camber in order to keep that rear end in line and get a good exit. So we'll see what I do here is if we slow it down, I point the car in, get it slowed down, kind of ride the corner out a little bit, give it a little bit of a coast, and once I see this bump start appearing, that's when I want to get back on throttle, and hopefully the car should be right on those curbs and should just drift out onto these. As far as these are concerned, you can run them all the way out to here as long as you don't dip a wheel out there. You can dip a little bit if you go too far, like 2 wheels over. It is an off track. But yeah, so you really want to dip the car in early. That'll give you a lot more stability. I used to be going out here in my old laps, and that lost me probably a solid 2-3 tenths of time. So if I had to say one thing for this corner, yeah, dip down into here, get this right, and then just full throttle out. And then going to the next one, this one's tricky because it feels wrong with the braking points, at least for me. I would say give it a shot a few times. You really want to brake as late as possible. So we're going to go to exterior for this one. I'm looking at this 100 board generally when coming in, so we can see I've got it there. And I start braking almost as it goes out of view. But you really need to brake late, and it's the same principle. This corner is very heavily cambered. As soon as I'm on the brakes, I'm pointing the car inwards. In this case, I carry a little too much speed. I'd like to be a little bit further in, and I'm carrying enough speed that I actually drift back out. But what that lets you do is if I was taking my old line where I go out this way and then cut in, I'm not taking full advantage of that inside camber, and I'm also not quite using the hill as much to get me slowed down, which in this case, what you can do is you can slow down a lot and then almost mid-corner, just full throttle the whole thing out. You will lose time compared to taking the wide line and cutting back in, going up the hill. However, the gain on the braking is just so large it negates almost any gain up the hill. And then focusing on this exit real quick, you really want to run out into this runoff. I didn't really take advantage of it up here. Ideally, if you were getting a better line, this one I didn't quite get the best. You want to be all the way out into this with your corner. That way, you're again utilizing track space, leaving nothing on the table. But yeah, this corner and the corner before it, very, very key for time gain. I would practice those zones the most, probably. So up the hill, we'll head into our last couple corners. This one here, you really are looking for this 200 board here. As I approach it, right as it goes out of view, I'll start braking. Mentally, it looks a little bit like I'm braking afterwards, but aiming for braking as soon as the 200 goes by. Turn in early. Oh, and also get the car slowed down. I go to second here, so I'm staying third. I would recommend probably staying in third. This is a bad habit of mine, going down to second. Hopping the curb here is not ideal, so that is another area for improvement. If we go to our outside view here, if instead of having this line where we hop the curb, we'd hung it a little bit wider and just cut in sooner, we'd gain a little bit of time. The bouncing is going to cause us to go out towards the outside of the track a little bit more, which is just a nonsensical time loss. There's no reason to lose time there. And then for your drifting outwards, you can just go all the way to 2 tires off. Again, didn't quite use that here. The one downside is that you will, when you come back across these curbs, it does kind of jolt the car around a little bit. But I think running over it's going to give you more time gain than anything else. And then running up to this corner, this one, as far as braking zone or braking marker goes, is a little bit hard. It's one of my most inconsistent corners. I would say it's a lot about feel. There's 2 different lines you can take here. The one I take, I go a little bit wider first and stay a little bit wider. Again, I don't really have a braking marker. It's kind of by feel. I go usually as soon as I can see kind of the curb start to develop, when I can see this red, for example. That's what I would call my braking marker. But my line, I stay a little bit wider. I get it slowed. I come in and I try to hop this inside curb right at this kind of pinch point it has, and then drift out to these and let these catch me. The other line you can take will take you, if we zoom out here a little bit, rather than hanging it out wider, when you start braking, you start aiming for the inside and kind of ride that inside around the corner. So instead of being out here, you'd be more kind of in this area. Just keep it slow, ride it, and then throttle out. The advantage is that it's a little bit more stable. This line, this kind of pinch point in the curb where the old track meets with the new, causes the car to unsettle a bit and will want to slide. If you take the tighter but slightly slower line, it's a little bit more stable because you're not quite full on throttle yet. I would recommend taking this wider line if you can handle it, but if you struggle a lot with coming back onto this section of the track, I would say just take the tighter line and spare your tires. Ultimately, burning your tires here isn't going to save you a whole ton of time. It'll end up costing you later in the race. So save your tires where you can. And then going into here, I'll go back to cockpit. We, in these cars, because they're rear engine, we don't have a whole lot of weight on the front. So what I would say is different to other cars is I try to kind of time my quote-unquote braking or my entry point to be between the 100 and 200, generally towards the 150. So I'm kind of starting to turn in here and brake. The biggest thing, though, is you'll see I give a little blip of throttle. Or, sorry, brake. A little blip of brake. What I am doing there is I am loading up the front axle during my initial turn in to try and get those front tires to bite. If I can get those tires to bite, I can ride out the rest of the corner. I'll have better... the car will be pointed in a better direction, and I can kind of ride this inside and just throttle it right out. There's a little bit of coasting you can see, so I'll coast a little bit. Usually my throttle out point is kind of once I've crossed over the midpoint of this quote-unquote lane. So you can see we've got this divide here in the track. Once I'm kind of about here, I try and throttle. And the exit, go out to here. One note is if we are... Let's do a TV camera here. Oh, let's do static. You can run 2 wheels all the way out to the color curbing. Once the midpoint of the inside wheels crosses this, you'll get a 1X. However, I would say the biggest problem out here is when you run wide enough to start hitting all of this gray, it has a tendency to want to throw the nose in the air. The bumps in the track don't look very big. However, they, through experimentation, are quite large. Um, Especially as you get towards here, they will want to throw the car out into a wall. Um, I believe in this lap, I don't push it over these. These are now 3D curbs, so when you run your tires over them, you'll feel an effect when you fall off. When you drive back over, they can have a tendency to kind of unsettle the car going into here because it's such a tight braking zone. So I would say probably during race, you want to just run 2 tires out here. Don't try not to jump onto this second set of color curbs. Just kind of keep it right here. And then setting up for our last turn. This one, I'll go back to cockpit here. You really want to kind of brake once these tire barriers get past you. It's not when they go out of view. You can see I'm still on throttle a bit, but kind of at that point, start thinking about getting on the brakes. Make sure you are as far out this way as you can. We're not going to use any of this, but we do want to be kind of on this orange line here. And one thing that I need to improve with this line is my turn-in is a bit early. Ideally, you want to initiate your turn-in once you hit this white line here. So if I slow this down, you can see I'm already turning in, and I'm headed for a very, very early apex, which is not going to bode well for my exit. And it ends up costing me a bit as I kind of, you can see I feather the throttle here a bit, which is not ideal. But yeah, brake as soon as these go by. Kind of, if you have a third monitor, you'll see them go by in your side monitor. Start your turn in kind of a little bit later than I do here. Try not to hop up onto these curves. Just ride that white line there. If you hop onto these and come off of them, it's going to bounce the car around a little. And then, of course, you really want to get as close to these as possible. If I go to a TV view here, you can see how close you want to run it. Really, the closer you can get, the better. Obviously, you don't want to touch, or this is an easy way to get some steering damage or just some suspension damage. But as close as you can comfortably get and get consistently, yeah, try to run it out to that wall. But other than that, I think that's the full lap. I don't really have any other notes here. Just some general car notes are that this car is very susceptible to, or very sensitive rather, to changes in loading on the front or rear axle. So if we go back, I think, let's see. I wonder if I can find one. If you are very choppy on your brakes, or you're on, off during braking, the car is going to want to spin a bit more. If you're a bit lighter, it'll be a little bit more compliant. Again, track state's really important. But other than that, I really don't think I have any other notes. Anybody is more than welcome to ask me questions on Discord. Anything at all, I'm happy to help. Thanks, guys.